Alice was never the kind of girl who drew attention. Discreet, always with a book in her hands, she liked to observe the world around her without really getting too involved. Until Gabriel showed up. He was everything she wasn't. Outgoing, popular, and full of confidence. A player on the school team, he was always surrounded by friends, laughter, and grand plans for the future. Their first meeting was nothing special, at least for Alice. She was sitting on one of the benches in the courtyard, enjoying a rare moment of silence before class started, when Gabriel appeared. He threw his backpack on the bench next to him and smiled. "You always have that book in your hand," he commented, tilting his head to read the cover. Alice looked at him, surprised. She hadn't expected him to even know she existed. "I like to read," she replied, awkwardly. "What do you read so much?" "Love stories." She smirked. "Stories about life." Gabriel laughed, fixing his hair in a carefree way. "That's interesting. Maybe one day I'll tell you my story." She thought it was funny. What kind of story could a popular boy have? But, against all expectations, that conversation didn't stop there. In the following days, Gabriel always found a way to start a conversation. At first, Alice thought it was just a joke, but soon realized that he really seemed interested in her. Time passed, and, without her realizing it, they were getting closer and closer. During breaks, in the hallways, in physical education classes, where Gabriel always found a way to make some funny comment just to make Alice laugh. Then, one late afternoon, he showed up with an unexpected invitation. "Come watch practice tomorrow. I want to show you some moves." Alice hesitated. She never won a practice. But the next day, there she was, sitting in the stands, watching as Gabriel ran around the field, scored goals, and every now and then looked in her direction and smiled. And that's how it all began. In their second year of high school, they were already officially dating. They were inseparable. Alice felt safe by Gabriel's side, as if anything was possible. They planned their future as if life were a big chessboard where all they had to do was choose their next move. "What if we live in a big city after school?" Alice suggested excitedly. "I'm up for it," Gabriel said, always optimistic. "But I think I'll need a small apartment. As long as there's room for our books and a comfortable couch, that's fine." They spent hours imagining the life they would have together. They talked about traveling, work, a house with a balcony, and pizza nights on the couch. To Alice, it all seemed like a dream about to come true. But dreams are sometimes fragile. She just didn't know that, in a short time, everything would change. Alice felt like nothing could go wrong. Her relationship with Gabriel seemed solid, full of plans and promises. However, as the last year of high school progressed, small changes began to appear. At first, they were almost imperceptible. Before, Gabriel would always wait for her after class so they could walk together to the school gate. But now, he was always in a hurry, saying he had to take care of something. It took longer for her to respond to her messages. The meetings in the park, which used to be a sacred Saturday, began to be postponed. "Sorry, Alice, I have a lot of things to study," he said in a distant tone. At first, she tried to understand. After all, it was a crucial year with college entrance exams and pressure about the future. But deep down, she felt that something was different. Gabriel no longer asked questions about her dreams, nor did he talk about the plans they had made together. It was as if that part of his life was being left behind. Then, on a cold autumn afternoon, the final blow came. They were walking through the park, a scene that had once been so familiar, but now seemed strange. Gabriel was quieter than usual, with his hands in his coat pockets and his eyes fixed on the ground. "I need to talk to you," he said suddenly, stopping next to an empty bench. Alice felt a tightness in her chest. The words sounded like a warning. "About what?" Gabriel sighed, avoiding looking at her. "We always talked about the future, right? About growing up, achieving our things, following our dreams." She nodded, confused. "But I realized that I need space for that." Alice blinked, not understanding. "What do you mean?" He finally looked at her, but his eyes no longer had the sparkle they used to have. "I mean that I don't think our relationship makes sense now. I need to focus on myself, on my plans." The words hit like a punch. Alice felt her throat dry. Gabriel, you always said we dreamed together. What changed? I changed, Alice. And I don't want anything holding me back. Nothing holding me back. The sentence echoed in her head like thunder. The love she felt, the promises, the plans, everything seemed useless now. But I never held you back. Her voice came out shaky. Always. I supported you. Gabriel looked away. I know. I'm grateful for that. But I need to move on. Alice felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She wanted to argue, to remember all the promises, the happy days, but something in his face told her it was no use. He had already made up his mind. And then, before she could think of anything else, Gabriel simply turned around and left. She stood there, feeling the cold wind blow on her face, trying to process what had just happened. But the worst was yet to come. A few weeks later, Alice began to notice that something was wrong with her body. Constant fatigue, nausea, a late period. Time passed, and the doubt became a real fear. One late afternoon, she bought a pregnancy test and locked herself in the bathroom at home. Her hands trembled as she waited for the result to appear. Then she saw it. 2 pink lines. The world spun. Her heart raced. She was pregnant. Alice stood still, staring at the small display on the pregnancy test. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. She blinked several times, trying to convince herself that there had been some mistake, but the 2 pink lines were there, clear as day. No, it can't be, she whispered, feeling her entire body tremble. She sat on the cold bathroom floor, hugging her knees, while her mind whirled with 1,000 thoughts. How did this happen? How would she tell Gabriel? But more than that, how would she tell her parents? In the days that followed, fear grew inside her. She tried to muster the courage to text Gabriel, but every time she picked up her phone, her hands got sweaty and her mind froze. He had been clear when he broke up with her. He wanted to move on, without anything holding him back. And now he was going to be a father. After much hesitation, she decided to tell her parents first. They might be upset at first, but they were a family. They would help her, right? That night, dinner seemed normal. Her mother, Marina, was excitedly talking about the latest neighborhood gossip, while her father, Antonio, read the newspaper as usual. Alice felt her stomach churn. She swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and before she lost her courage, blurted out, "I need to talk to you." They both stopped. Her mother put the spoon down on the plate. Her father folded the newspaper, frowning. "What's wrong?" Antonio asked suspiciously. Alice felt her throat catch, but she forced the words out. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was cutting. Her mother's eyes widened. Her father froze. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then, Marina let out a nervous laugh. "This is a joke, right?" Alice lowered her head. "No, it's true." The reaction was instantaneous. Her mother turned red, standing up so fast that the chair scraped across the floor. "How could you do that, Alice? You ruined your life." "Mom, please. I didn't plan this, but I'm going to take responsibility for it." She tried to argue, her voice trembling. Her father, who had been silent until then, slammed his hand on the table so hard that it made the dishes shake. "Do you have any idea what you're saying? How do you plan to raise a baby? Do you think you'll be able to support a child?" Alice opened her mouth to respond, but her mother interrupted her. "And the father? Who's the father?" She hesitated. "Gabriel." The fury in her father's eyes grew. "And he's going to take responsibility? Is he going to marry you?" Alice felt a lump in her chest. He doesn't know yet." Marina laughed, ironically. "Oh, so on top of everything, you didn't even tell him. My God, Alice, you embarrassed us. What will the neighbors say? What will the church think? I don't care what anyone else thinks." Alice exploded, finally losing control. "This is about my life, not anyone else's opinion." Her father took a deep breath, clenching his fists. "Well then, if it's your life, you're the one who's on your own." Alice froze. What? "If you want to act like an adult, do it away from my house," he declared, dry and firm. The ground disappeared beneath her feet. "Dad, you can't be serious." Marina crossed her arms, avoiding looking at her. "Grab your things and leave." Alice felt her chest tighten as if someone had knocked the air out of her lungs. She looked at the two of them, searching for any trace of empathy, any sign that they were just scared and would soon change their minds. But there was nothing but coldness in their eyes. She realized there was nothing more to say. She swallowed her tears and ran to her room, grabbing her backpack and some clothes in a hurry. Each piece she threw into her bag made her heart ache more. How could she be so disposable to her own parents? Before leaving, she stopped in the hallway. "You are my family," she whispered, her voice breaking. But no one answered. Without looking back, Alice left the house, embracing the only thing she had now, the uncertainty of tomorrow. The cold night wind hit Alice's face as she stepped out of the house. Home, with her backpack thrown over her shoulders and tears still streaming down her face, she walked aimlessly through the city streets. Each step felt heavy, as if she were carrying the weight of the world. She tried not to cry, tried to convince herself that she would find a solution, but the reality was brutal. She had nowhere to go, no close friends who could help her, no money saved, nothing. The only thing she had was the baby growing inside her. She stopped on the corner of an empty street, her arms crossed over her chest, tried to think. Then a name came to her mind, Aunt Helena. Helena was her great-aunt, her late grandmother's older sister. Alice didn't see her often, but she remembered her sporadic visits and her loving advice. If anyone could help her, it was her. She picked up her cell phone and, with trembling fingers, looked for the number. Her heart raced as she waited for the call to be answered. "Hello." The hoarse, sleepy voice answered on the other end. "Aunt Helena, it's me, Alice." Her voice came out choked. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. "Alice, my dear, is everything okay?" And that was when Alice broke down. With her voice breaking, she told everything that had happened. The pregnancy, her parents' rejection, the loneliness that surrounded her at that moment. When she finished, her breathing was ragged from crying. Helena's answer came without hesitation. "Get on a bus and come here now." Those words were a relief. Alice spent the last money she had on a ticket and, that same night, boarded the bus to the small town where Helena lived. The trip was long and silent. In the reflection of the window, she saw her own tired face, her eyes swollen from crying so much. When she finally arrived, the sun was already rising on the horizon, tinting the sky with orange tones. When she got off the bus, she saw Helena waiting for her. The woman with gray hair and a firm gaze wrapped her in a tight hug without saying anything. Alice held herself back from crying again. "Thank you for having me," she murmured weakly. Helena held her face with her wrinkled hands, looking at her tenderly. "You're my family, girl. You will always have a place here." Helena's house was small and simple, but cozy. With exposed bricks and a backyard full of flowers and herbs, it exuded a welcoming warmth. For the first time in hours, Alice felt safe. In the first few days, she slept a lot, exhausted by the emotional turmoil. Helena, with her infinite patience, let her rest, but she always left food ready on the table and a cup of hot tea next to the bed. "You don't have to face this alone," Helena said one night, while Alice, sitting on the porch, caressed her belly that was barely beginning to show. Alice sighed. "I'm scared, Andy. I don't know how I'm going to raise this baby. I don't even know where to start." Helena took her hand and squeezed it firmly. "Everyone has fear, but courage is moving forward despite it." Those words were engraved in her mind. As the weeks went by, Alice began to get back on her feet. Helena helped her look for a job, and after a few failed attempts, she got a job as a waitress at a small diner in town. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. The days were exhausting. She spent hours on her feet, serving customers and cleaning tables, feeling her feet throb with exhaustion at the end of the day. But when she returned home and saw Helena's encouraging smile, she felt that she was on the right path. She didn't know what the future held for her, but she was sure of one thing. She would do anything for the baby growing inside her. And deep down, she felt that this was just the beginning of her true story. Time passed, and before Alice knew it, her belly was big enough to attract attention. At work, customers looked at her curiously, and some people asked her questions that she avoided answering. But despite the fatigue and the judgmental looks, she kept going. With each passing day, she could feel her baby moving inside her, as if trying to say, "I'm here, Mommy. Hold on tight." Helena continued to be her safe haven. She always had chamomile tea waiting for her when Alice came home exhausted from work. And she always repeated, "You're doing great, my daughter." But no matter how much she tried to prepare herself, nothing could truly prepare her for the day of her birth. That cold morning, Alice woke up with a sharp pain in her belly. She took a deep breath, trying to ignore it, but the pain came back, even more intense. "Aunt Helena," she called in a weak voice. Helena appeared at the bedroom door in an instant. One look was enough for her to understand. "It's time." On the way to the hospital, Alice held her aunt's hand tightly, trying to hold back her tears. The fear was so great that it almost suffocated her. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? "Breathe, my girl," Helena said. "Everything will be fine." The hospital was simple, but the doctors were attentive. As soon as Alice entered the delivery room, the pain became overwhelming. Her hands gripped the sheets, sweat dripped down her forehead, and with each contraction, she felt like she was going to faint. "Come on, Alice. Just a little longer," encouraged the obstetrician. Alice closed her eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and did what she had to do. And then, the most beautiful sound in the world filled the room, her baby's loud crying. The tears came uncontrollably. When they placed that little being in her arms, Alice felt something she had never felt before. Pure love. Unconditional love. A mother's love. He was so tiny, with flushed skin and a head covered in dark hair. He seemed fragile, but at the same time, so full of life. "Welcome to the world, my love," she whispered, caressing his little face. Helena, beside her, smiled with eyes full of emotion. "So what will his name be?" Alice looked at that innocent little face and knew right away. "Lucas." That night, as she held Lucas in her arms, Alice realized something. It didn't matter who had left, who had rejected her. What mattered was what she had now, and she had everything she needed. But the challenges were just beginning. The first few months were the hardest. Alice barely slept, spending her nights awake with Lucas crying in the makeshift crib next to her bed. The bills piled up, and her waitressing salary seemed to evaporate before the end of the month. As tiring as it was, every smile Lucas gave her made it all worth it. He was growing up fast, and every little achievement, his first smile, his first babble, filled her heart with hope. Helena did what she could to help. While Alice worked, her great-aunt took care of the baby with all the love in the world. "He's a strong boy," she said, rocking Lucas in her arms. Just like his mother, despite all her efforts, Alice knew she needed something better. Her dream of studying and building a career seemed impossible now, but she couldn't stay at that job forever. It was one afternoon, in the middle of the workday, that everything changed. The coffee shop was full. Alice was running around, balancing trays and taking orders when she felt her body bump into someone. "Oh my God," she exclaimed as she saw coffee spill all over the table and all over the impeccable suit of a man who seemed to be very busy with important paperwork. The customer jumped to his feet, trying to clean up the mess with napkins. Alice felt her heart race. "I'm so sorry. Let me pay for the dry cleaning. I swear it wasn't intentional." The man looked up and, to her surprise, smiled. "Don't worry. Accidents happen." Alice blinked, confused. She expected an outburst of anger, but he seemed more amused than irritated. "My name is Daniel," he said, holding out his hand. She shook it, still nervous. "Alice." Daniel sat back down and picked up one of the Coffee-stained papers. You caught me right in the middle of an important decision, he commented. And coffee helped you decide? She joked without thinking. He laughed. Maybe. That was the end of the conversation, and Alice continued her work, thinking she would never see that man again. But the next day, Daniel was there again, and the day after that too. Little by little, they began exchanging small talk. He asked about the city, about the coffee, about the people. She answered, still not understanding why such a well-dressed and apparently successful man seemed so interested in a simple coffee shop. Until one day, he asked something that made her stomach turn. Do you have children? Alice hesitated. Yes. A boy, Lucas. Daniel smiled. How lucky he is. He must have an amazing mother. She didn't know what to say. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to her like that. She just didn't know that that encounter would change her life forever. Alice couldn't explain it, but something about Daniel intrigued her. He kept showing up at the cafe every day, always ordering a black coffee and making sure to sit at the same table. Over time, their conversations became more natural. He asked about her day, about Lucas, about her dreams, things Alice couldn't remember the last time anyone had cared to know. And you? She asked one day, as she dried her hands on her apron. What do you do for a living besides spilling coffee on documents? Daniel laughed, leaning back in his chair. I work in investments. I have a few projects around town. She raised an eyebrow. So you're one of those rich guys who buys everything and changes neighborhoods? He raised his hands, amused. Is it my fault if I want to bring progress? Sometimes progress means taking away what's already good. Daniel smiled, as if he liked her answer. Fair enough. The days passed, and to Alice's surprise, she began to look forward to his visits. But still, she kept a barrier between them. There was no room for any more disappointments. Until who, on a cold night, when closing the cafe, found Daniel waiting at the door. Alice, can I invite you to dinner? She stood still. The invitation seemed simple, but for her, it was more than that. Daniel, she sighed, crossing her arms. I don't want games. I don't want empty promises, and, most of all, I don't want confusion in my life or in my son's life. He held her gaze, serious. I understand, and I'm not asking for anything more than a few hours to talk. That's all. Alice hesitated. On the one hand, all of that seemed absurd, but on the other, if a simple meal didn't compromise anything, why not? Okay, she finally said, but on one condition, no false hopes. Daniel smiled, and at that moment, Alice had the feeling that her life was about to change once again. She just didn't know if she was ready for it. Dinner with Daniel was different from what Alice expected. There were no games or attempts to impress her. They just talked like two people who somehow understood each other. Over time, Daniel became a part of her and Lucas's lives. At first, Alice tried to keep her distance, but it was impossible to deny that Lucas loved his visits. He brought educational toys, taught the boy how to put together small projects, and was always patient with his endless questions. And that was how, without realizing it, Alice began to let her guard down. Time passed, and Lucas grew up. He had always been a curious boy, the kind who took toys apart to understand how they worked. At the age of 10, he was already talking about electrical circuits and energy as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Mom, one day I'm going to be an engineer, he would say excitedly. Alice smiled proudly. You can be whatever you want, my love. But as the years went by, Lucas's dream changed. During his adolescence, he got involved in a science project at school and had the opportunity to visit a hospital. There, he became fascinated by the work of doctors and nurses. Mom, I want to help people, he said one night while studying. I want to be a doctor. Alice felt immense pride, but also enormous fear. She knew how hard it was for someone like him to get there. It's a long road, son, she said, trying to prepare him for reality. But Lucas just smiled. I know, but if you manage to get through everything you went through, I can too. Those words touched her deeply. Lucas studied day and night, determined to get a scholarship. Daniel, who was already like a second father to him, helped him as much as he could, encouraging and supporting him at every step. And then, one day, the phone rang. "Mom, I passed." Lucas shouted on the other end of the line. "I got the scholarship. I'm going to study medicine." Alice cried, not out of sadness, but out of a pride that couldn't contain itself. All the effort, all the sleepless nights, all the difficulties, it was all worth it. But fate still had one more twist in store for them. And that twist involved the past that Alice had tried to forget. The years passed, and Lucas became a dedicated medical student. Alice remembered the boy who took apart toys, and now she saw him saving lives. It was hard to believe how time flew. She and Daniel had built a life together. He became a constant presence, not only in her life, but especially in Lucas's. Although he never tried to replace anyone, it was undeniable that Lucas saw him as a father. Alice felt happy and, for the first time in many years, safe. Until, one afternoon, Lucas called from a hospital with a strangely hesitant voice. "Mom, something happened today." Alice immediately became alert. "What is it, son? Is there a problem?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "A patient came in today with a serious case of appendicitis. We performed emergency surgery and everything went well. But that wasn't the problem." Alice frowned. "So what happened?" Lucas took a deep breath. "The patient is my grandfather." The world stopped for a moment. Alice felt a shiver run through her entire body. W. Antonio, she whispered, barely able to say her father's name. "Yes. And there's one more thing. After the surgery, he asked to see me. He said he needed to thank me, and he wanted to meet my family." Alice's heart raced. It was as if a ghost from the past had returned to pull her back into a pain she had buried. "Mom, what do I do?" Alice closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. For years, she had tried not to think about her parents, the way they had abandoned her, the pain she had carried alone. Now, fate had placed that open wound right in front of her. "Do you want to see him?" she asked, her voice lower than she had intended. Lucas was silent for a few seconds before answering. "I don't know, but he seemed sincere, like he really wanted to talk to us." Alice ran her hand over her face, trying to organize her thoughts. "Okay, if you want to talk, let's talk." Lucas sighed on the other end of the line. "I'll set up a meeting. Lunch, something simple. Can it be here at my house on Sunday?" Alice felt a lump in her throat. "Yes." "Okay." She hung up the phone and stood still, looking at her own trembling hands. Daniel, who had been watching everything from afar, approached and gently touched her shoulder. "Are you okay?" She took a deep breath. "I don't know." Daniel took her hand, squeezing it lightly. "You don't have to do this alone." Alice nodded, but deep down the fear was still there. She was about to meet the parents who had abandoned her, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. Sunday came faster than Alice expected. Since early on, she had felt her stomach churning, as if at any moment she would lose control of her emotions. While she set the table for lunch, her mind was far away, immersed in painful memories. Daniel noticed her restlessness and approached. "If it gets too difficult, you don't have to continue. It's your decision." Alice forced a smile. "I know, but I think I need to face it." Lucas, who was in the kitchen organizing the dishes, looked at his mother with a mix of anxiety and expectation. "Thank you for accepting this, Mom. I know it's not easy for you." She took a deep breath and nodded. A little after noon, the doorbell rang. Alice felt her heart race. For a moment, she hesitated, but then Lucas opened the door. There they were. Her parents looked older. Antonio, who used to have a rigid and authoritative posture, now seemed more fragile. Marina, who always cared more about the opinion of others than about her own daughter, had teary eyes and a tired expression. "Alice," Marina began, but her voice failed. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Antonio cleared his throat and looked at Lucas. I don't even know what to say. You saved my life, son." Lucas didn't answer right away. He just nodded, keeping a neutral expression. Marina looked at Alice with a look full of regret. "I know that nothing you say will erase what we did. But Since that day, we've never had peace. Alice crossed her arms. And even so, they never looked for me. Marina lowered her head, while Antonio sighed, looking exhausted. We sent letters, but you never answered. Alice laughed humorlessly. You threw me out on the street at the most difficult time of my life. How did you expect me to open any of your letters? Silence returned. The shame on their faces was evident. Daniel watched everything without interfering, letting Alice make her own decisions. Lucas, on the other hand, felt the weight of that conversation. He looked at his mother, then at his grandparents. I don't know what you expect from this. Alice continued, her voice controlled. Immediate forgiveness? A chance to be a family again? Because it doesn't work like that. Marina wiped away a silent tear. I just want to meet my grandson and see you again. Alice closed her eyes for a moment. 1,000 thoughts crossed her mind. She could send him away and never look back. But at the same time, she knew that Lucas, despite everything, had the right to decide for himself. She sighed, finally allowing herself to let her guard down a little. Okay, come in. Let's have some tea and talk. Her parents nodded, visibly moved. Lucas gave a small smile, pleased to see that at least a first step had been taken. Alice knew that this didn't mean that everything was resolved. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something different. Because some wounds never heal completely, but time can sometimes help transform them into learning. In that day, Alice realized that the future was still being written.